it could be Golden Freddy, but I don't know. I have no idea. He could have just put a random costume there to scare whoever was in that room. See, FNAF, it's making me burp because of how confusing it is. What the heck? Hello, everybody. My name is Banshee Screams, and welcome back to another reaction video. Yippee! Yippee, yippee, yippee! So, today, I will be reacting to FNAF the Ultimate Midnight Theory. FNAF the Ultimate Midnight Motorist Theory by John Fnaf. Now, I like John Fnaf. I think he does decent theories. They're not the most accurate thing in the world, but a lot of FNAF theories aren't. A lot of FNAF theorists just don't know. They just don't know what they're talking about. They either spread misinformation, game theory, or they don't know with the lore. They just make stuff up, or they take all the right information and throw it all out the door, and you could prove them wrong with facts, and they'll just be like, no, it doesn't agree with my headcanon, That's FNAF theories for you. But anyway, I like John Fnaf. I like the way he presents theories, the music, the way he talks, how he doesn't say it's fact, how he doesn't try to force it down your throat. I like that about him. Anyway, I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to stop yapping. But if you guys enjoy this reaction, leave a like down below, subscribe, and leave a comment down in the comments about what you want me to react to next. I will be reading them all, and I will react to whatever you guys say. Alrighty, let's start this. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, start.
Is someone there? Help!
2 years ago.
Are you there? Gregory? I got your message.
Fake Scott.
Scott Cawthon? I have things to say.
Oh yes, I remember that happening.
Staying for a second.
Scott likes to
Motorist?
comment on his videos. I remember him commented on the live PlayStation event for Secret of the Mimic. That one, I remember him doing that. That was really cool.
We need to talk. Uh-oh, God. No, Scott. Wait.
Gotta run.
I've spent the last 2 years of my life dedicated to figuring out the biggest mystery in all of Five Nights at Freddy's. Midnight Motorist. And in this video, I'm gonna share everything that I found. This is
What
by
did you
far
find,
the most
John?
comprehensive FNAF breakdown I've ever made. Let's get started. Midnight Motorist is one of 3 lore-heavy minigames in FNAF 6, with the other 2 being Fruity Maze and Charlie's
puppet,
Death minigame.
yeah.
FNAF 6 is the most lore-heavy game in the franchise, and that's on purpose.
Yeah.
In the interview Dawko did with Scott Cawthon, Scott stated that FNAF 6 was made explicitly to answer questions regarding the story.
That was a game that was born out of necessity because I needed to kind of bring a conclusion to several.
I hope Scott does a
from the
third
series.
interview,
This
just
means that the
confirming
most
stuff.
vague and mysterious minigame in all of FNAF came from a game that was supposed to tie up loose ends. And as ironic as that is, it's also fascinating. It makes me wonder what Scott was thinking when he made this minigame. Did he intend for it to be this big mystery, or is he genuinely shocked that the community is still trying to figure it out? In a game that does answer a ton of
I wouldn't be
questions
surprised.
regarding
People
the
didn't
story
solve
and
the
gives a
logbook until
satisfying
last
and epic
year.
conclusion to everything, Midnight Motorist is
Dave.
virtually the only thing in the game that feels unsolvable, and it's because of how random it is. The minigame takes place directly after Charlie's death. Afton pulls up to the pizzeria, kills
yeah.
Charlie, and speeds off. Midnight Motorist is showing us where he sped off to. We know this because the minigame is labeled later that night in the game files. The minigame shows Afton driving back home, but before he gets there, he passes a clearing in the woods containing a mound of dirt and a bar called Junior's that he was apparently kicked out of. You can even see the bouncer standing at the entrance who promptly tells Afton, "Come on, you know you can't be here. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be."
Junior's
This
is like
the part of the
100% a
minigame
bar.
that makes the most sense. Scott was giving us important context to Charlie's death by showing that Afton was under the influence when he killed her, possibly explaining why her death was so sloppy and spontaneous. Afton then eventually finds his way home, walks in the door, and is met with someone watching TV. The person says to Afton, "Leave him alone tonight. He had a rough day." Afton then goes to the bedroom only to find that it's locked. Quote, "I told you not to close your door. This is my house. He can't ignore me like that. I'll find a way in from the outside." He then goes outside to find that he escaped through the window, along with some animatronic footprints next to the bushes. Afton then says, "Ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back." Then the minigame ends. Even with the
I have no idea what that means. Literally no idea what that means. I don't know if the footprints are Afton standing there. I don't know if it's supposed to be just like Golden Freddy, like how in the movie Golden Freddy went to Mike's house and got Abby. It could be Golden Freddy, but I don't know. I have no idea. He could have just put a random costume there to scare whoever was in that room. See, FNAF, it's making me burp because of how confusing it is. What the heck? Excuse me, I'm just gonna play the video.
Full context of the minigame, there's a whopping 5 big questions left unanswered.
What
Who
are
is the
they?
person watching TV? Who is the runaway? What was buried in the middle of the woods? Where did the runaway run off to? And why are there animatronic footprints by the bushes? In order to answer these questions, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Let's look at this minigame from the perspective of the developer, starting with the person watching TV.
Looking
when
at
Scott
it as
made this part of
Scott.
the minigame, he likely started with this, a blank room with nothing in it. He then knew he wanted to add a specific character to the room, likely a member of the Afton family. Scott then decided to add 3 details to help us better understand who this is. He had the person sit and watch TV, wear a gray shirt, and talk with gray text. These are all traits that belong to Michael Afton. In FNAF 4, Michael wears a gray shirt, uses gray text, and in Sister Location is known for
watches
going home,
TV.
sitting on a chair, and watching TV. The only 3 details we get about this character perfectly line up with Michael. But if this is Michael Afton, who is the boy who escaped out his bedroom window?
Crying
By
child.
process of elimination, it has to be the only boy left in the Afton family, the crying child. Need more proof? In FNAF 4, we learn
Need more proof? Classic. I love that saying. Yeah.
that Michael Afton is in charge of babysitting the crying child. And in that game, we constantly see them home alone together, just like we see in Midnight Motorist. Also, one of the main things we learn about the crying child comes from one of the very first lines we get in FNAF 4. Quote, "What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again." Whenever Michael wasn't terrorizing his younger brother, he would constantly lock him in his room. And what do we see in Midnight Motorist? Michael and the crying child home alone, with Michael watching TV while the crying child is locked in his room, matching perfectly with everything we learned from FNAF 4. So far, we've answered 2 questions with some pretty solid evidence to back them up.
I mean,
but we
yeah.
still have 3 questions left.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
it could
next
be a
one
crying
being
child.
a big one. What is the pile of dirt in the clearing? This random pile of dirt has
That's what I want to know about. What does that mean? Is that supposed to be something buried? Is that supposed to be a body? So I heard some people say that's supposed to be the secret entrance to the underground Sister Location bunker. What could that mean? What could it be? Maybe it's like, you know how in FNAF 2 all those dead kids were around the restaurant? Maybe whenever Purple Guy got there and he stopped Freddy from trying to save them, he went and grabbed all those bodies and just buried it down below in that hole and just covered it back up. See, but I don't know if this takes place during 1987. I don't even know if that minigame takes place in 1987 because there's no date. Honestly, he could just have taken the bodies out of the animatronics, the FNAF 1 animatronics, the classics, and just threw them in that hole and buried it. Or that's Charlie's body. Or it's just random. It's just there for people to just look at and be like, yeah, yeah. Nothing to do with the story. Anyway.
It's driven me nuts for over 7 years now, and in my opinion, it is the biggest mystery in all of FNAF. Here's why. Unlike other parts of Midnight Motorist, there's literally nothing to connect this pile of dirt back to. The person sitting in the living room had specific traits that connected directly back to Michael Afton. The runaway has specific traits that connect it right to the crying child. This pile of dirt has nothing. Every time the pile of dirt is mentioned in official FNAF media, it's referred to as a secret grave. And I think the community has collectively agreed that that's what it is. Someone or something was buried here. And since we have basically nothing to go off of, let's once again look at this from the perspective of the developer. When Scott was making Midnight Motorist, he knew he wanted to add this grave, but instead of putting it in a cemetery or a hill by a tree like we see at the end of the game, he put it in the middle of the woods, clearly intending it to be hidden. The fact that the grave is so hidden and quote secret implies that whatever was buried here is part of some sort of crime, or at least something that someone wants to cover
Body
up.
bag.
So in order to figure out whose grave this is, let's go through the list of crimes in this franchise. First, we have Charlie. Maybe
There's so many. There's so many crimes. The MCI, the Dave's death, the Charlie's death, the technicians in sister location getting hung, the whole I guess building robots to capture kids is a crime. What is that, like 5? What else is there? There's I guess stealing the Springlock suits and using them against the company's wishes. That's another crime. What else is there? Trying to kill your son in FNAF 3. If you do work as Michael, that's another crime. What else is there? What is there? That might be it. Is that all the bad things he's done? Well, one of those wasn't William. One of those is Michael, but like... Oh, yeah, building a... no, I guess all the robots go along with Baby. Breaking and stealing the endoskeletons in FNAF 1. That's a crime. What is that, like 8 now? So many. Oh, my goodness. Oh, another one. Speeding. Because he's speeding in Midnight Motorist. What is that, like 9? Is there 10? Is there 10? Is there 10? Is there 10? Oh, another murder in FNAF 2, the DCI. Oh my goodness. It's so many crimes in this series. That's insane. The majority of them is by William. Whew.
after her death, Afton decided to cover it all up by burying her body in the middle of the woods. But we know that's not the case because we literally see Afton drive away after the murder,
she's in the
leaving
alleyway.
her body outside in the rain. So we know it's not Charlie. Another popular theory in the community is that this is where the crying child was buried. But like we established earlier, the crying child is likely the runaway, so he would still be alive at this point. So the crying child is also off the table. I've heard some people say that this could be the grave of Mrs. Afton, but that feels a little too random. Not only is there no mention of Mrs. Afton dying in this franchise, there's only one vague mention of her existence at all. In the TV show Immortal and the Restless from Sister Location, we do seem to get a parallel to Mr. and Mrs. Afton in Vlad and Clara, but
isn't that supposed to be paralleling Michael, though?
Mrs. Afton isn't very satisfying and doesn't have much to back it up, so she's out.
What if it's Elizabeth? What if Elizabeth died first, then William went and got her body out of Baby and buried it there? That could work. That could work if Elizabeth dies first. That could work.
Out of the running. Next up, we have Elizabeth. I actually really like the idea of it being Elizabeth. Because her death was a freak accident entirely caused by William. Not only that, we know that Afton actively tried covering it up. When Elizabeth died and Circus Babies closed, Afton hid the truth from the public by saying that the restaurant closed down due to gas leaks.
Okay, do you guys think it's actually because of that, or do you think there's actual gas leaks? Because there is gas canisters down there, and it was pumping up hallucination gas into the FNAF 4 testing rooms. So it legitimately could have been a gas leak. I don't know. Leave your guys' thoughts in the comments.
So it would totally make sense that Afton would want to hide her body. But in order for this to work, Elizabeth would had to have died before Charlie and the crying child. And I just don't see Afton creating animatronics specifically built to capture kids that early in the...
See, the man's a psycho. I don't think you need to have a reason you need to give him a reason to be a psycho. The man could have just been born a psycho. You can always be a psycho. Or say he was drunk and he's just a psycho. He works at a freaking like a Chuck E. Cheese establishment. He probably just hates kids from dealing with them there. That's a reason.
The timeline. So although I do like it and it could make sense if we get more information, I don't think this grave belongs to Elizabeth. So if you haven't noticed yet, we are quickly running out of dead people. And at this point, I was about to give up. Every answer I could come up with felt unsatisfying because there was no evidence to back it up. So before I gave up, I decided to try one last thing. Actually play the game. But this time, I would really analyze it from the developer's point of view, like we've been.
Sorry for pausing again. I saw someone play FNAF, solve it by playing it, and more people need to play the game. Quit just watching YouTubers. Actually play the game. I don't know why I didn't click before, but FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 isn't like a minimum wage job. It's not by the wage. It's by like just the job you do. You work 5 nights and you get a paycheck. It's not like $4 an hour or anything like that. And since it's like that, you can't use the 1983 date by the paycheck. You can't do that. Another reason it's only 1983 is because Matt Pat used the first ever theory about the Chuck E. Cheese event that happened in 1983 about FNAF 1. Oh, Matt Pat. Oh, give me a headache, dude. Your theories are so bad. Anyway.
Doing this whole video. And it was during this one playthrough that I discovered the theory that I'm gonna share with you today. In FNAF 6, there are 3 lore-heavy minigames: Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Charlie's Death minigame. The first thing I noticed was in order to get the lore keeper ending of the game, you need to complete all 3 of these minigames. This is interesting because there are other things you can buy in FNAF 6 that feature lore, such as Candy Cadet and Egg Baby, but those ones aren't required to get the lore keeper ending.
Never mind.
Paired these 3 minigames together.
No, you do need the. Don't you need Candy Cadet? Don't you need all 3 stories for the Candy Cadet? I swear you need all 3 stories to get that. If you don't, then I've been trying to get it wrong for all this time.
Why? Well, we know that the security puppet minigame and Midnight Motorist are directly connected. Midnight Motorist literally takes place directly after Charlie's Death minigame. The minigames are so connected, in fact, that I started asking myself the question, why does Fruity Maze even exist? That may sound odd, but really think about it. The security puppet minigame revealed that Charlie possesses the puppet and gave us more info on how that happened. Midnight Motorist revealed important context behind Charlie's death, showcasing that Afton was under the influence when it happened. It also showed us exactly where he sped off to. Candy Cadet told us the story of 5 things becoming one thing, explaining how all of the spirits ended up in Molten Freddy.
If you do not believe Molten MCI, get out. It's basically canon at this point. You got that endoskeleton Easter egg in Help Wanted. You got the twisted, was it the twisted ones? It's either the twisted one or the fourth closet. One of them having the FNAF 1 characters getting like merged together into one big animatronic. Then in the files of this game, you get a blueprint that has Molten Freddy with all of has the most amount of remnant and stuff in it. FNAF fans are delusional.
Egg Baby gave us Henry's insanity ending speech, which is arguably the biggest lore drop in the entire franchise. All of this stuff is super important to understanding the lore of these games and the franchise as a whole. And then there's Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze tells us the story of how Susie, the kid who goes on to possess Chica, was lured into the back room by Afton. And that's it. This minigame feels odd.
I don't get why there's yellow text and blue text.
Anything. We already knew that Afton lured the kids into the back room.
Like, why does that text color color
even reveal
change.
Susie's name at the end of the game. The only purpose of the minigame is to show the specifics of how Afton lured Susie into the back room. So that again begs the question, what is the purpose of this minigame? Well, like I said earlier, Scott purposely paired this minigame with Midnight Motorist and Charlie's death. And just like how Midnight Motorist gives added context to Charlie's death minigame, I think Fruity Maze gives added context to Midnight Motorist. I actually think all three of the minigames are connected to each other. In Fruity Maze, we learn exactly how Afton lured Susie into the back room. It's revealed that Susie's dog had died, and Afton told her, quote, "He's not really dead. He's over here. Follow me." What if I told you that it's not a human buried in the woods in Midnight Motorist?
Is it
It's
her dog?
Susie's dog. Let me explain. The
Never
more you
heard this
play
before.
The Fruity Maze minigame, the more it starts to break. First, you see a bunch of fruit scattered throughout the maze. Then you start to see Susie's dog alongside the fruit. And in the final phase of the minigame, the fruit is gone, and we see three things: Susie's dog, a mini coffin, and flowers. The music in the minigame then cuts out, and you start hearing a car alarm. After the car alarm, you then see Afton show up behind her. The car alarm indicates that Susie's dog was hit by a car, and the coffin and flowers indicate that the dog was buried somewhere. The
Oh,
fact
I
that
always wondered
Afton
what
knows
that
her
white
dog
square
died,
was.
matched with the eerie car alarm
Rectangle.
playing before Afton shows up, tells me that Afton had something to do with her dog's death. The absolute nail in the coffin for this comes from the final detail we see in this minigame. Randomly scattered throughout the final phase of the minigame among the dead dog, coffin, and flowers is a yellow...
Hear me out. This is going to sound crazy. It's not, I mean, it's kind of relevant, but what if he somehow had a projector, or had something? He had Shadow Freddy, and that's the blue text. And Shadow Freddy was the one like, "Follow me, come here." And they're following Shadow Freddy. And then William just walks in with them. Then William kills them after showing Shadow Freddy's not real. And that's why there's two different colors in text. Or two different text colors. I don't know. I'm spitballing.
rabbit digging a hole in the dirt. Scott added a sprite of a yellow rabbit, aka William Afton, that dug a hole in the ground. And in Midnight Motorist, we see something down the road from Afton's house buried in the dirt in a clearing right next to the road.
I
Why
mean,
did Scott
yeah.
show us the story of how Afton lured this one specific kid? Well, it's because it gives us important context for Midnight Motorist, therefore connecting all three of these minigames as part of the Lore Keeper ending. In all of the FNAF games, this is the only time we've seen anything relating to Afton burying something in the dirt, and it comes from a minigame that was intentionally paired with Midnight Motorist. So now the question becomes, why? Why create this storyline about Susie's dog and then immediately show us where it was buried in the very next minigame? Well, the answer is he did it to
To show that the MCI happened first.
establish a timeline. By showing us what happens directly after Charlie gets killed, we're able to see which characters are still alive. In Midnight Motorist, we see that Michael and the Crying Child are still alive directly after Charlie was killed, which means that the Crying Child must die after Charlie. The inclusion of the dirt mound, though, throws a whole new wrench into the timeline. If this mound of dirt was put there to imply that Susie's dog was already dead and buried before Charlie died, that would mean that the missing children's incident likely happened before
first.
Charlie and the Crying Child's deaths, effectively making it the first major event in the timeline. This goes against pretty much every interpretation of the timeline I've ever seen. But for fun, I decided to keep going and see if there's actually evidence to back it up. Could the missing children's incident really be the first event in the timeline? Well, the first thing I thought of
That would
was
be
the
crazy
FNAF
if it
4
does.
minigames. In those minigames, we see the Crying Child walk up to a little girl who says, quote, "You'd better watch out. I hear they come to life at night. And if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone." This is odd because the commonly believed year of the missing children's incident is 1985.
Yeah,
And we know
1985.
that this minigame takes place in
1983. How would that happen? Unless he's trying to say that the MCI happened before 1985. Which, I mean, I'm going to get hate for this, but technically it could. Because there's no part in the game timeline, in the game continuity, saying that it happened in 1983. that was only in the books. That was only in the books and the Into the Big Game, but the Into the Big Game is not in continuity. It really could, unless the one retcon is that FNAF 4 doesn't take place in 1983 and it actually takes place in 1985, which I mean, I guess it doesn't really change a lot, does it? Could the one retcon be that? I don't know. I still think the retcon was the William being like a criminal, or William, the newspapers in FNAF 1, and the murderer going to jail, or being like, yeah, whatever it is.
3. That means that the rumors of kids being stuffed into animatronics existed in 1983, before the crying child was even dead yet, which would line up with the missing children's incident being the first event in the timeline. While replaying FNAF 6, I also noticed a weird detail about the Charlie death minigame. One thing about Scott's 8-bit minigames is that they have little to no details, so much
There's
so
nothing
that we don't
in
even
there.
know which pizzeria this minigame takes place in. Scott really only adds details that are required to understand the basics of what's going on. So when we get to the part of the minigame where we go outside, you can see that Scott added rain and garbage cans to show that we're on the side of the building. But one other thing he decided to add were posters taped to the walls. This is a common thing you'd see on the side of a building, but what's interesting is the type of poster it is. Scattered on the walls outside of the pizzeria are wanted posters. In a
Those are
minigame
wanted
that has
posters?
little to
I thought
no
those were just
detail,
random
Scott
posters.
took the time to make a wanted poster featuring the outline of a man wearing a hat. Not only that, he scattered the same poster all over the walls. A popular trope in movies and TV shows is to hang a comical amount of wanted posters of the same person all over the place. It's a way to emphasize how important it is for this person to be caught. And it seems that Scott did the same thing here. By putting a bunch of wanted posters outside of a Freddy's restaurant, it's almost like Scott was trying to show us that a criminal having something to do with Freddy's was on the loose when Charlie was killed. And I think that criminal could be William Afton. If Midnight Motorist really is showing us that the MCI happened first, these wanted posters would be a great way to show us through environmental.
What, did they they know it was William and William's just been hiding? Or did they get a picture of William? Did they take William to jail and he escape or something? What, did he get one of his robots to come break him out? I don't know. That was so confusing.
Storytelling that William Afton already was a wanted criminal before Charlie got killed. And one of the strongest pieces of evidence for this actually comes from one voice line in Ultimate Custom.
I was the first. Yeah.
Chica says, "I was the first. I have seen everything." This voice line blows my mind.
I mean,
because in
yeah.
a series where Scott has stated that he likes to clear up misconceptions from past games in future games, he decided to add a voice line in the very last FNAF game he ever made that says, I was the first. I have seen everything. This heavily implies that Susie was the first murder in the franchise, which would make sense if the MCI
happened first. Yeah.
Another piece of evidence comes from Help Wanted 2, where we see 6 graves for Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Golden Freddy, and the puppet. But there's a specific order that we need to light them in. That order has Chica first, Foxy, Bonnie, Freddy, Golden Freddy.
That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. I remember having to light it. It's Chica, Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, Golden Freddy. Freddy happens before Bonnie. You messed up. Or I'm remembering it wrong. I swear it's Chica, Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie.
And then the puppet. This matches perfectly with everything we've discussed so far. Chica was the first, she's seen everything, followed by the rest of the MCI, and then Charlie.
I always thought Charlie died after the MCI, because if she died first, everyone would have just found her body, and if someone found your body. If you're found, then you can move on. But if your body's not found, you can't move on. That's why the spirits are trapped in the animatronics and they can't leave. If the MCI happened when you die in FNAF, you don't realize you're dead. You're still like there, like playing games, doing whatever, until someone like tells you like, "Hey, you're dead," and they show you with your body. What I feel like happened is that the MCI happened first. They're just playing along. Then Charlie died. Since Charlie's body's found, she knows she's dead, and she can move on, but she doesn't because she wants to help the MCI find their bodies. So she goes and shows them that their bodies are in the suits, which is gives lives. Then they realize, oh, we're dead, and they possess the robots. That's how I think it happened. I feel like it's the most logical thing. It makes the most sense. It makes so much sense.
All of this stuff shows that there is evidence to back up this timeline of events, which means that this very well could be where Susie's dog was buried. So that's 3 of the 5 questions with a pretty satisfying answer to back it up. But
hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. I know I'm pausing a lot, and I'm so sorry. What if William had a 3rd son? What if Rory was William's 3rd son? And that's who he was testing on. And that's the son that ran away. Maybe. I'm spitballing. I'll shut up.
But now we get to the actual hardest questions to answer in this minigame. Where did the crying child run off to? And why are there animatronic
why is
footprints
that?
by the bushes? Unlike the pile of dirt in the clearing, we actually have dialogue we can analyze that's related to the scene. When William Afton comes home to see that his son escaped out his bedroom window, he says, quote, "Ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back."
Place being
The most
Freddy's
important part of this
Fred
dialogue
Bear's?
is the word again. Ran off to that place again implies that this is a pattern of behavior. Afton also immediately knows where he ran off to. This isn't the first time the crying child has done this. That then begs the question, where is he running off to? One possible option comes from the Twisted Ones, which released 6 months before FNAF 6. In the book, Charlie gets kidnapped by one of the Twisted animatronics, and her friends are desperately trying to find her. While her friends are looking for her, Shadow Freddy appears in the woods, and her friend says, quote, "I don't know what it is, but I think it wants us to follow." Shadow Freddy then lures them directly to Charlie. What Shadow Freddy is and why it did this is never explained in the book, but what if it helps explain Midnight Motorist? What if, just like in the book, Shadow Freddy appeared outside of the crying child's window and lured him to Charlie? In FNAF 4, we're told repeatedly that the reason the crying child is scared of the pizzeria is because he saw something. So what if the thing that he saw was Charlie getting killed outside of the pizzeria? This theory is pretty popular in the community and is similar to ID's Fantasy's take on Midnight Motorist. Every time we see the crying child in FNAF 4, he is terrified of Fredbears. But Midnight Motorist showed us that that wasn't always the case. It turns out that the crying child used to run off to that place all the time. He loved going there until he saw Charlie get killed outside of the pizzeria. I really like this explanation, and it's because it gives a solid reason for why Scott set Midnight Motorist on the same night as Charlie's death. The reason he showed us that the crying child ran off to the pizzeria the same night Charlie was killed was to connect those 2 events. Midnight Motorist showed us that the crying child wasn't always scared of the pizzeria, while also showing us the night that all changed. Also, Shadow Freddy luring the crying child to Charlie not only matches up with the Twisted Ones, but also FNAF 3, where we see Shadow Freddy luring them back, in the Follow Me minigames. This is a great explanation and is super satisfying.
This is making a lot of sense.
A few problems with it.
Yeah, it's the 1985, and FNAF 4 happened in 1983. But, see, 1985 isn't technically in the games yet. It hasn't been confirmed in the game timeline, so this technically could work. but it's been bashed over everyone's head multiple times that 1985 is the MCI.
FNAF 4, when the crying child is left alone at Fredbear's, he's told to run towards the exit. But if you try to go further into the pizzeria, you hear, quote, "No, don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way. Hurry and leave." This implies that what the crying child saw was further inside of the pizzeria. The crying child wouldn't want to go outside if what he saw was Charlie being killed outside.
Or he just doesn't
Also,
wanna
2 months
be
after FNAF
around
4 came
in
out,
the
Scott
pizzeria
gave
'cause
us
he's
3
scared.
clues to help figure out the game, with one of them being what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. This is Scott outright telling us that the crying child didn't actually see anything bad happen, he misunderstood what he saw. There's a reason that after we get the line, "Don't you remember what you saw?" we see this Easter egg. An
Yeah, I
employee
think it's just
in the shadows
someone
of the
putting on a
back room
suit.
putting on a Bonnie
I think
suit.
that's just
The
what he
crying
saw.
child saw this and thought someone was being stuffed into a suit. This is why he wants to leave the pizzeria and is scared of the animatronics. When confronted with one, he's told, quote, "It's too late. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what will happen if he catches you." That "he" is clearly referring to the Fredbear mascot that just appeared in front of him. So although I love the theory of Crying Child being lured by Shadow Freddy and witnessing Charlie's death, it's not perfect. Speaking of things not being
Well,
perfect,
nothing's perfect
this
in
whole
FNAF.
theory isn't perfect. Susie's dog being buried in the clearing and the MCI being the first event in the franchise has evidence to back it up. But time and time again, in the Silver Eyes trilogy, Fazbear Frights, and the Into the Pit game, Scott
1985.
has established that the MCI happened in 1985, making it impossible for it to be the first event in the timeline. You could argue that those books and the Into the Pit game take place in a different continuity, but with how many times Scott has stuck with that year, I doubt he would change it for the main games. And with that, the entire theory falls apart. But that's kind of the point of this video. I wanted to show you the process of what it's like to theorize about this minigame. From getting excited about finally finding some solid answers with solid evidence to back them up, to finding the one or two things that make it all fall apart. The theory I shared with you today does contain my best guesses for what this minigame was trying to show us. But at the same time, I don't believe all of it. I love the idea of Susie's dog being buried in the clearing. I even
It
decided
makes
to
so
look
much
this up
sense,
to see
but
if
the
anyone's thought of this
1985
before, and it
just
turns out a couple people have. But in order for this to work, the MCI can't happen in 1985, and I believe it does. I also don't think the graves in Help Wanted 2 are showing us a death order. I think they're probably showing us the order the spirits moved on. In the Happiest
I
Day
don't know about
minigame,
that.
you can see the MCI victims' masks drop first, with Charlie's then dropping last, matching with the grave order. The thing is, it feels like Scott's been trying to give us answers for this minigame for years now. There's multiple stories in Fazbear Frights about a kid being lured out of their house by an animatronic and taken to Freddy's. We also recently got the Midnight Motorist level in 5 Laps at Freddy's, which confirmed Afton is the Orange Man. And finally, we have the FNAF movie, where Scott literally showed us a version of Midnight Motorist playing out in real time. During the night, Golden Freddy shows up to Abby's house, where we see someone sitting in a chair watching TV and Abby in her room. Golden Freddy then sneaks Abby out of her house.
I never
and
noticed
takes
that.
her
That's
to
so
Freddy
cool.
Fazbear's Pizza. And the funny thing is that this could also
I still hate the FNAF movie.
work in the games. Just like Abby, the crying child is also being taken care of by his older brother Mike. The crying child also has a close relationship with his plushies, just like Abby. Abby calls the animatronics her friends in the movie. The crying child calls his Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy plushies his friends in the games. The crying child could easily be friends with the animatronics. And Midnight Motorist could be Golden Freddy sneaking the crying child out of his house at night to go hang out at the pizzeria, just like in the movie. But like we established earlier, this would only make sense if the MCI happened first, which seems unlikely. Midnight Motorist is one of the biggest mysteries in all of FNAF because of its extreme lack of detail and lack of things to connect it back to. And this could very well be on purpose. In the recent interview Dawko did with Scott, he talked about how he makes his games.
You know, whenever I'm making these games, there are a lot of things that are in my head that are just flowing.
Yeah, he puts like one thing down
and when I
leaves
have
it,
them and put them there,
goes,
it's the first
and
half
comes
of
back,
something. It's like
and they connect
it's
it.
like a string or a rope just like reaching out, and I know that what's there on the other end is there. I trust that it's there. I know that it's there, and then whenever I progress forward, the rest of that just reappears. The rest of it appears and just fits into place perfectly. That's how all my games have been made. I feel that there is something there, and I make the roads to get there for that to be revealed.
Scott loves foreshadowing and laying the groundwork for something to be explained later. So Midnight Motorist could be Scott giving us the first half of something with the rest being revealed later on. Who knows? This minigame is a great representation of FNAF as a whole. There are so many ways you can make everything work, but you can't achieve that without filling in some big gaps in the story yourself. At least for now. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.
That was a good theory. That was a really, really, really good theory. Oh my goodness. I really like that. That was a great theory. Oh my goodness. That was great. That was so good. Literally my only issue with it is the MCI happening. That it happens in 1985. That's the only issue with it. But like in the games, it still technically hasn't been confirmed. It's been in the books. It's been in the Into the Pit game multiple times. It's been 1985. I don't know. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, smash that like button, scream at that like button like a banshee, hit that subscribe button. If you want me to react to anything next, just please leave it down below in the comments. I will be reading them. Leave me the name of what you want to react to. Tell me anything. Doesn't have to be FNAF. It can be anything at all. Alrighty, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.